Welcome back, everyone. Today we're covering a very highly requested project, and that is Avalanche, also known as AVAX. So we're going to touch on a little bit of what they do very briefly, some recent news, and then spend most of our time looking at chart patterns and price predictions. So let's get started right here. So really what their main goal is building fast, low cost and scalable blockchain technologies to allow a lot of developers and new dApp projects come onto the ecosystem faster. And so these are kind of their three main pillars. It's obviously building fast and low cost blockchain technology, allowing them to customize the blockchains, making them private or public, and then obviously scaling. So scaling is going to be huge in terms of their ability to attract more developers to the network, and it's something that they're really focusing on. So the real question becomes, what does this actually look like in comparison to competitors, and what does this actually lead to in terms of concrete numbers? And so when we look at their statistics versus obviously a lot of the competitors here, we can see that their goal of speed is clearly coming to fruition. I mean, they're multiples of times faster. So this is TPS, also known as transactions per second. And as you can see, they just have a way faster network right now in terms of what the other competitors can put up. And also their transaction time. So their transaction finality from initiation to completion on average is less than 2 seconds, and obviously multiples quicker than any other competitor as well. Also, a great thing to note is that they have a very high safety threshold. Again, way higher than a lot of these competitors. So obviously a lot of investors are looking at this, a lot of other project owners are looking at this and seeing a lot of opportunity. And potentially the most popular recent news about Avalanche is that they raised $230 million in private funding. So obviously there are a lot of other investors and other folks seeing value in what they have to bring, and more people want to partner with them over time. And kind of going off that, they've had a couple key partnerships recently. So obviously their partnership with Aave is probably the most significant. And then there's others that people aren't necessarily talking about as much. So they're working with Benki, who's building on top of the Avalanche network. And so they're having a great time building on there. Great partnership. And then also Alpha Finance Labs. They're using the Avalanche blockchain with a lot of success as well. So I think this is going to just increase in terms of numbers of partnerships coming down the line as they prove out their technology. And the last thing I want to touch on right here is the total value locked. So this has just been essentially skyrocketing since mid-August for Avalanche. So it was around 250 million steady, and then it skyrocketed to almost 3 billion. So that was more than a tenfold increase. And so this is just showing that, not only retail investors, but a ton of these, big institutions are actually now looking into Avalanche as well. And there's a lot of money being put behind it. This always comes into question whenever there's someone, another project trying to compete with Ethereum. How are people viewing AVAX or the new project in regards or in as a replacement to Ethereum? So this is interesting. Net flows 2-to-1 over the last 7 days of people coming and switching over to the Avalanche network. So it looks a lot like developers, at least certain developers, are moving from Ethereum to AVAX, which is a very good sign. And the other thing that I've touched on a few times here is that their mainnet is only a year old. So it's really impressive for them to have all of these partnerships coming in, all of these updates just within their first year. And right now they have over 300 industry projects building on the platform. I know some of the ADA fanboys might correct me, but I'm pretty sure it took Charles Hoskins and Cardano a lot longer than that to get 300 projects on the platform. So just a lot of exciting movement and a lot of energy behind Avalanche. But let's hop into the charts. That was the recent news and kind of the brief updates around them. Let's hop into the charts and price predictions. All right, so here we have the AVAX chart. This is a 4-hour candle, and we have the 50, 100, and 200-day moving averages up on the board. So before we kind of get over here into the nitty-gritty and talk about where we're going to be going in the future, and then also some key resistance and support levels to the downside, let's just kind of reorient ourselves and kind of understand how we got here. So obviously back in February, kind of like with the rest of the crypto market, we saw a all-time high here at about 60 bucks. We then kind of went sideways and consolidated a bit here for quite a while, few months. And then finally, we dropped back down with the rest of the crypto market in May off mainly the Elon and other China news. And then here we actually saw a pretty hefty cup and handle. And I know, we talk about these a lot, but it's just a very, very common chart pattern. A lot of these cryptos tend to show this pattern when they're really forming solid low-level support here and then looping up and trying to kind of break out to the upside. So massive cup and handle here, aggregating from May to August. And then obviously, the last couple months have been history. It's just been a great last few months for AVAX, a great September, and then a great end of August. So that's kind of how we ended up here. And now we can kind of talk about what's been going on recently and some of the patterns I'm seeing. So first of all, I want to mark this all-time high over here because this is going to come in handy in terms of looking at key levels. So just want to make sure we have that up as well. So hopping over here, let's take a look at what we've been doing the last month or so. So as you can see right here, we kind of went sideways for, it's about a week. And we formed, somewhat of a bullish rectangle, not quite. We were starting to kind of see it here. And then after that, we found support right at the 200-day moving average. And once we kissed the 200-day right here, we saw a breakout above that previous all-time high right here. And once we saw that, once that got baked into the chart, we saw it, easily start to set new resistance levels above that. And then, just barely kind of hanging on just below that new all-time high in our last set of supports. So that's kind of what we've done here recently. It's been a nice bullish continuation pattern, but we kind of want to talk about what we're seeing here just in the last week or so. And to get a better idea of where we're going to be headed, it's going to be nice to actually look back at our previous times that we've kind of retraced before setting a new resistance level. So if we look back here and just kind of measure out where we fell from the top to the bottom, a little bit more, probably about 30% there. I kind of missed the mark there just by a tad, so let's redraw it. Yeah, about 30% we fell just in the previous retracement just a couple weeks ago. So let's look at where we are right now. We're at about 14%. And then back here, we did this previously, what were we at? About 25. So we've been within 20 and 30% retracements every time we found a new support. So I mean, technically speaking, if we open up and look at the downside here, technically speaking, there is good reason to believe that we could drop lower. Before we set that new all-time high. It seems as though these tend to test key resistance of key support fib levels before kind of reaching back up to find that new resistance. So it looks as though, worst case scenario, we drop down and maybe test this previous all-time high and then come back up. I don't see us dropping further than that because that wouldn't be in line with the continuation pattern. So as you can see, it's been consistently setting new lows up the continuation pattern. So I wouldn't, based on what we're seeing, I wouldn't expect it to drop back to this level, but I wouldn't be surprised if we hit this $60 level from that old all-time high. So kind of looking at where we could be headed here and why I think it's going to be a next bullish month or so is the fact that you could make a case that we have a pretty solid falling wedge right here. So this tends to be, and I know we talk about these pretty often as well, this tends to be a pretty bullish pattern. The issue with this falling wedge is that it could also easily become a very, very symmetrical triangle, and a symmetrical triangle isn't necessarily bullish or bearish, but it usually indicates a breakout. So it's not the most solid falling wedge. It's a good one. It looks pretty bullish, but it's not the best one I've seen. So we still do have room to go to the downside, but I am going to look at a few upside levels here for us and maybe make some price predictions. So now that we have an idea of where our downside movements, let's start comparing where we might be headed. And now that we have the fib levels up on the board, let's just do some retracing really quick, because last time we went under the 50-day, we had some pretty big movements when we closed a week under the 50-day. So that was right back here, right around $9. If you see that, we fell under all the moving averages, including the 50, and we fell under it convincingly, meaning that there were, almost a week full of candles closing under that. In these periods, we didn't have quite as much falling under it. So our last run up from here to here, this was just about 650%. So we'll call it 600. That's good to keep in mind. And then the next run that we had from 32 to about 80, this would account for about 200%. A little bit over 200%. So this right here, a little under 200. And it's important to note that, and I'm sorry for my bad drawing, but it's important to note that because that gives us an idea of what we can be trying to expect for our next breakout, assuming that we do break out, even if we test this previous all-time high. So looking at where we could potentially be, I think that this technically is part of our next breakout. So I think, we're safe to say that, somewhere between 600 and 200% increase from here would be acceptable and expected. A 600% increase from our current levels would put us at about $450, which is somewhat of a moonshot prediction at this point. We're going to need to see some more support and resistance levels consolidated for that. But just looking at some short to midterm here, so we're going to have to find the support. Right now we're kind of fighting a key fib level right here. And if we kind of fight this, and we're actually, if you can also see really closely, we are fighting a 50-day moving average right here. We might bounce off that and we might drop below it. In the previous times we did drop below that, so it's not the end of the world. We ended up coming right back up. But I would say when we do eventually come back up, we're going to test this $80 level really hard. So I could see us kind of bouncing here for a little bit before we break out. And then our next target level is going to be 109. 109 is going to be our next big resistance level. Once we break 109, that's when it really gets interesting. That's when we're starting to talk about, $150, $200. And so short to midterm, we're probably looking at something between, $100 and $150. And obviously that $450 number that we talked before, that's kind of our moonshot end of bull cycle prediction. But I think something more realistic would probably be 4 to 5x, somewhere between what we've seen here already, and it's already technically 200. It already 2x'd basically in the last month or so. So I don't think we're going to see 600% gain. Obviously, I would love that, but I think more realistic, we're probably looking at a 4x to 5x gain. So that would put us between $270 and $350. So in terms of end of bull cycle, we're probably looking at something between these two, if we're talking realistic. And then obviously our moonshot end of bull cycle projection would be around $450. And then to just review short to midterm, we're probably looking at something between $109 and $175. Hopefully by the end of October, if we're able to break above again this 50-day moving average and eventually bounce off that old all-time high and come back up to the upside to continue the bullish continuation pattern to the upside. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you got any value, would really appreciate it if you dropped a like. And subscribe if this is stuff you're interested in. I'm offering a free chart pattern guide for all my subscribers. The link to submit your email is in the description below. But just happy to be connecting with a new community, and just thank you guys so much, and appreciate you watching the video. We'll see you in the next one.